Hi, I'm Albert Pasaoa.
Hello, my name is Kevin Jefferies.
And this is the 635 Podcast. The 635 Podcast is about local politics, economics, and social and cultural issues in the Alvin Community College area. The views expressed on the show are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of Alvin Community College. Welcome to the 635 Podcast. I'm here. Kevin is back, and we are here to talk about some election issues coming up. Kevin, tell us what's going on.
Well, we got elections in May, and I'm sure a lot of people are probably thinking, well, man, I thought we had elections in March. Well, we got elections all the time. And so I think we need to catch up a little bit with the two different election dates in May, and so I thought it would be appropriate to do so. What do you think?
Sure. Actually, it does confuse me. I'm like, there are always these random elections going on, and it almost feels like it's weakening the value of the big November election.
Absolutely. It's just not valuable anymore because there's so many. Now, I will say, though, there is something to that. There's a whole line of political science that points out that, we like to complain about low voter turnout in the United States compared to other nations, but then other folks will come in. Well, if you look at other nations, they have much simpler elections, fewer elections also, places where maybe you have a parliamentary system where you're basically just voting for the party. Like in Israel, you vote for the party, and the party will say, okay, these are the people then we will appoint to different sorts of positions based on how much we end up winning. And you don't have a federal system in the sense that you don't have national offices, state offices, local offices, and everybody gets to set up their own elections and all of that. And so you end up having not only a lot of different elections, like I said, we're going to, by the end of May, we'll have 3 already, and then we'll have the big one in November. There's lots, as we know from looking at the one on in March, a lot of different things to vote for. So the argument is that sometimes this suppresses, I guess I shouldn't say suppress, maybe that's the right word to use. It makes it, less special, to show up to vote. And
it's
so,
like, it's like, I just voted, last year or whatever. It's like,
exactly. I thought I just did this. But we have important things. I mean, so part of what I want to go over today, on May, excuse me, hold on, what I'm looking at right here. I'm scrolling through, and I don't know if you have it up right now, the election calendar, important election dates from the Texas Secretary of State site.
Secretary of State, I think.
Exactly.
I can see it right there.
That is the Chief Elections Officer of the state of Texas, the ones that oversees election law in the state of Texas. And remember how elections work. It's sent to the counties to, in fact, actually run, like most things. Remember, the state of Texas doesn't really implement the bulk of its laws. I mean, it builds highways or oversees the construction of highways. You don't want separate counties doing that sort of thing because some counties really don't take that seriously. Runs the prisons, DPS, but and a couple of other things, water and whatnot. But most of it is a county thing, including running elections. But the state does establish overall rules associated with it, oversees it, and again sets the election dates. And again, this one link that I sent you has important election dates 2021 to 2022. And we've already had our one, March 1st, as we know. Then we have Saturday, May 7th, 2022, uniform election date. And there's 2 things that are going to be on the ballot. One is going to be a couple of more opportunities to vote for amendments to the Texas Constitution, both of these having to do with property taxes, and the other having to do with local political subdivisions. And a local political subdivision means a city, means an independent school district, means a community college district, and other sorts of special districts. Now, it doesn't mean counties, because counties were part of the ballot on March 1st. Some of those things are involved with. Remember, counties. The counties are a partisan election. These things are not partisan elections. You don't have an R or a D next to everyone's name. All it takes is a simple plurality, more votes than anybody else in order to win the race, so there are no runoffs here. And remember, that's part of what is going to happen later in May 27th, I believe it is, or is it? It's 24th, I'm sorry. Tuesday, May 24th, the primary runoff election, where, again, individuals get to choose from the top 2 If there wasn't a majority winner in the first round, for example, both Beto O'Rourke and Greg Abbott both got a majority in their respective primary elections, so there's no runoff there. But there is a runoff, for example, with Attorney General for both political parties. So that's what the participants, and again, remember this is one of those rules for runoff elections, for partisan elections. If you voted in the Republican Party primary, then you can vote in the Republican primary runoff. You can't go to the other side. Same sort of thing with the Democrats. You know, if you voted in the Democratic primary, you can't then go off to the other side. You know, you've basically committed yourself to the state as a Democrat or Republican for this particular electoral cycle. But again, that does not apply to anything that's going to be happening on the 7th.
Can you vote in the runoff if you did not vote in the primary?
You know what? I hate to tell you, but I can't answer that off the top of my head. That usually doesn't happen. You know, let me double check that. I don't believe you can.
I mean, I can imagine a primary happens and then a big, you know, two people square off and
people want to go off to the other side.
It's big, high profile. They start advertising.
Double check that real quick.
That draws people in.
Can you vote in? I should know this off the top of my head. In the runoff, if you don't vote in the primary.
I would guess, yes, you can. There would just be a way people would show up and then say, sorry, sir, you can't vote here, and be like, what? I don't know.
Here's something that popped up from the Texas Retired Teachers Association, an interest group. Special election. I guess you can edit this part out. We had some members ask if they could vote in a primary runoff if they did not vote at all in the primary election this year. The answer is yes, as long as you're a registered Texas vote. You can still vote in the primary runoff for the party of your choice. But if you voted in one party's primary, you can't vote in the other runoff. So there's the answer.
All right. So if you missed the primary, everybody, you could still vote.
You can still vote. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I can imagine people tuning out when there's a primary with just a huge field of randoms. And you're like, well, who's that? I don't care. And then they square off. It's a more high profile, you know, one-on-one type matchup. And then you know, people start advertising. And then people are like, ooh, now it's really going to matter. And so I can imagine that might happen.
I like the idea of a field of randoms. I want to be a field of randoms. Okay, so do you want to now look at the two amendments now?
So this is all right. So let me just make sure I got this clear. So the May 1st is an election, or am I looking?
No, you're thinking March 1st. This what we're going to discuss right now. What is going to be on the ballot for? Hold on, where is it? May 7th, Saturday, May 7th.
Saturday, May 7th.
So there's two things you're going to see. One having to do with these two new proposed amendments for the Texas Constitution, and then the local political subdivisions. Now, remember, the way this works, when the Texas legislature met last year during their regular session, they offered to the voters 8 separate changes to the Texas Constitution. The reason you do that sort of thing, I'm trying to open these things up right here while I'm talking. The reason you do this is because the Texas Constitution is a very limiting document, and it's very clear about the sorts of things that can't be done. Meaning, if you want to do something, you being the legislature, you have to get the Constitution changed. 2/3 vote in the House, 2/3 vote in the Senate. But remember, the Constitution has to be ordained and established by the people of the state, and so that means then it goes to the voters for an election. And in early November last year, we had an election. I think it was a standalone election, if I recall, where it was just 8 proposed changes to the Texas Constitution that were offered. And for whatever reason, on the ballot, it doesn't say constitutional amendments. You know, it just says proposition. And there were 8 of these things, and they were all adopted. And to give you an idea about how these things work, one of the things, we have these limitations, for example, on gambling, you know, that go back to the original wording of the 1876 Constitution, no gambling. Now, bit by bit, bingo, all these other sorts of things have been allowed, you know, anything pretty much short of casino gambling, which, you know, again, we have some interest groups trying to change that sort of thing. But charitable raffles on the part of professional sports teams. And so, some time ago, this was made allowable to a bunch of different organizations. But for whatever reason, they said, okay, we need to list the organizations that can engage in charitable raffles. And I guess they just forgot to include the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association and the Women's Professional Rodeo Association. And so one of the amendments last time would allow them, and of course this was allowed.
I'm just curious when, because I noticed. So yeah, I have played poker in the past. I've checked out some card rooms, which are apparently listed as social clubs. There seems to be they're trying to find some loophole here. It's like, well, you have to join our social club before you.
Now there's one in Galveston on.
I've been there.
Okay. Now this is what I hear. This is what I've heard argued. That's not gambling. If it's poker, it's a game of skill.
Okay.
Yes. So it's not gambling. And again, you're not really playing with the house's money or whatnot.
Yeah, that's
You're
true.
kind of competing with other, competing with other individuals. So that's what the poker folks will say, with a poker face. Anyway, I guess it's a bit of luck in terms. Well, you get. The luck is the cards that you get, but how you play them.
Absolutely.
That's the skill.
It's a game of skill with some. There's a lot of short-term luck, long-term skill.
Well, I mean, think professional sports. It's like who you're able to get in terms of a draft, and how you're able to work those folks out. Yeah. Anyway, so as we know, last year the regular session of the legislature met from early January until late May, 140 days. Then you had 3 called sessions. The second and the third sessions each passed it passed 2/3 on each side, propositions to impact property taxes. And that's kind of a very popular thing. Both of these would affect Article 8 of the Texas Constitution, which deals with taxes and revenue. And this is, let's see, I'm trying to.
Is this a constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to provide for the reduction of the amount of a limitation on the amount of ad valorem taxes that may be imposed for general elementary? Is that what you're talking about?
That's the one, yeah. Elementary and secondary public school purposes. So we're talking about, K through 12. We're talking about taxes from independent school districts. Say, on the residence homestead of a person who is elderly or disabled to reflect any statutory reduction from the preceding tax year and the maximum compressed rate of the maintenance and operations taxes imposed for those purposes on the homestead. One of the common complaints about this is when you offer things like this and people haven't done any research, you're not really sure exactly what this stuff is about.
I have no idea what what you said. That sounded like a Harry Potter spell.
Yeah, so let's go. A Harry Potter spell. I like that. There are analyses, but you know what? I have not actually seen specific analyses of these two. Usually the state is really good. The Texas, what I'm looking at right now is the website of the Legislative Reference Library of Texas, which is a great place to get not just information about this, but all proposed constitutional amendments going back to day one for the 1876 Constitution. There have been something on close to 700 that have been offered to the voters. A little bit over 500 have been authorized. And classes, I like to go through these sorts of things, especially when you talk about the different areas where bonds have been allowed, because Texas, bit by bit, as we become, less an agrarian state and more of a business-oriented state, you need the infrastructure necessary to kind of get things around. And so this allowed for that. But you've got that, and here's the other one. And this is from the third special session. And remember the thing with special sessions, the governor gets to call these things for up to 30 days. The governor gets to say what the subject of them happened to be. And, of course, these were the legislative sessions, too, that passed, some the abortion restrictions and some of the critical race stuff and whatnot. And so this one is the constitutional amendment increasing the amount of residence homestead exemption from ad valorem taxation. Of course, ad valorem to the value, so that's kind of what a property tax is, for public school purposes from $25,000 to $40,000. So instead of being able to exempt the first $25,000 from the value of your property, it goes up to $40,000, which again restricts a bit, how much revenue a school district is going to be able to collect for schools. And so that's one of the things that some of the property tax hawks, I guess we could call them, and the Texas legislature have been focusing on. So
how controversial is this one? I mean, what kind of fight is this facing?
I don't think this was hugely controversial. Now you certainly do in the legislature. Now, certainly from the point of view of school districts, school boards, so those individuals, they would have some problems with this simply because it's like their argument is they're being nickel and dimed effectively by folks on the in the legislature, and you have to make this stuff up elsewhere. How else are you going to, where are you going to get the extra revenue? Or if you're not going to get the extra revenue, are we talking about, minimizing teacher salaries? Are we talking about, hiring fewer people, larger class sizes? The governor recently called this one, put a committee together to try to deal with, why is it we're losing teachers? Well, one of them might be because we're not paying them enough. They can make more money doing other things.
Yeah,
so.
people, workers are being lost all around. Just
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how much is there any projections on what this might do to local budgets, and also how has school budgets been affected the last few years? What direction have they been going? I mean, are they being flooded with money, and then people say, oh well, this is more than they need, and let's increase the exemption?
Well, if you're talking about flooded with money, I mean that would ultimately come out to what somebody's definition of flooded happens to be. By the way, before I go into that, as I mentioned, I mean, for whatever reason, the reference library has yet to come out with analyses of these amendments, and usually they're pretty good about having that stuff out ahead of time. So I don't know what the issue is currently. So you can't really get too much into the detail associated with the pros and cons. Hopefully we can come back in and look at this. But remember that in a way you could make the argument that there's more money being collected for independent school districts, also community college districts, all the rest of that, because of the increase in property
Absolutely.
values.
Yeah, that's got to be huge.
You have that.
You would imagine.
So this might be also a way of dealing with that. But of course, what goes up can come down. So to what degree are these going to increases in revenue? And again, I don't have numbers in front of me.
Okay.
That would probably be a worthy thing for us to look at some point in the future.
This is definitely huge. I mean, you've got to imagine how increase in property values would be, affecting the budget.
Sure.
In fact, I don't know if I mentioned this. I ran to a random guy at Taco Bell, and we just started chatting, and then he started talking about exactly this issue of appraisals and then basically higher taxes and things like that. So.
Well, an interesting subject, maybe we could kind of like flag this for something in the future, is the different sorts of things that the legislature has been doing to try to put limits on this. In fact, actually, we saw recently a narrowly approved election that was mandated by recent decisions in the legislature, saying that if the amount of revenue exceeds a particular percentage of revenue collected because of not an increase in the tax rate, but an increase of the value of property, that has to be approved by the voters. So that would be another technique that the legislature has given to voters in different districts to try to put a limitation on expansions of property taxes.
Okay.
Anyway, so the other thing that we're going to be voting for is going to be on the ballot on May 7th. All of the, I can't say all of them, but a bulk of the local political subdivisions, and again, like I said, that means, well, any of the local governments that aren't a county. When you think about county elections, think about that as affiliated with the state. Everything else would be the city, the independent school district, the community college district, and also some of the smaller special districts like, the emergency services and things like that. You've got those coming up as well, too. So city of Alvin, we're going to have general elections here. There are 3 members of the city council. We have special single-member districts and also at-large districts. So city council district A, city council district D, city council at-large position 2. They're going to be up for grabs. And A and D have just one person running for it. Martin Vela, Glenn Starkey. At-large position 2, you have 2 individuals, Joel Castro and Roger Stuxa. are going to be running. So at some point, if we want to go a little bit further into those individuals, we can discuss their backgrounds and also what are the particular issues that are going on in that particular race.
How long are their terms for?
I believe these are 4-year terms.
Okay.
Yeah. We can look at this. Let's see. Qualifications, candidate packet. Anyway, so let's, if you want to keep going.
Okay.
Alvin Community College, here at Alvin Community College, we have a 9-person board of regents. That's how it works. Also with the independent school district, 9 of them. You've been to meetings, haven't you?
I think I've been to one.
Right now we have 3 people, positions 7, 8, and 9. These are overlapping 6-year terms. That's how it works here. So you got a total of 9 individuals. It's just like the Senate. Patty Hertenberger, who used to be an employee here. Yvette Reyes-Hall. Patty's running for position 7. Yvette Reyes-Hall for position 8. And then you've got David Pickren and Michael Hoover running for position 9. Now remember, just, so we understand, because we also have Alvin Independent School District I want to talk about. Just because it says Alvin doesn't mean we're talking about the same, borders. The way that the city of Alvin looks is very different than the way that the Alvin Community College looks and Alvin Independent School District. In fact, it's funny because I teach dual credit at Shadow Creek, which is in Pearland, the western part of Pearland, but it's in the Alvin Independent School District.
Yeah.
So some people are kind of, anyway, flummoxed by that sort of thing. Then also we've got, speaking of which, the Alvin Independent School District, which also has 3 positions that are up for election as well. And so, soon enough, maybe next week, we can talk a little bit more about who those individuals happen to be.
And so the ACC, is it called a service area? So that's the service area would be the area where if you live in that service area, you are able to vote.
I think it's just the taxing district that you get to vote for. The taxing district is smaller than the service area.
Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah. And that's what the reason that would be, you're paying taxes, taxation without representation, that kind of theory. So if you're paying taxes to it, then you get to vote. And again, the idea too is, the big thing that all these folks do, you're kind of overseeing operations, and you're hiring a president, you're hiring, officially you're hiring everybody, but it's more the folks up on top. And superintendents if it's the independent school district. But the big thing is that you get to oversee, it's an indirect way for the population to oversee the tax rates. And again, that's why this whole issue with property taxes and the value of property becomes an issue, because you can have an increase in revenue without having to increase the tax rate simply if the value of the property starts to increase.
That blows me away. What does ACC receive any significant amount of money from the state?
I tell you what, we can look through. It does. There's you've got the primary 3 sources: the state, the tuition dollars, and also local property taxes. I don't have the percentages in front of me right now. I cover that a lot of times in class, and you got a little bit that comes from the national government as well. It's not huge. That's like the smallest area. But yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah, that's just really amazing that so much like maybe most or some large amount comes from local property taxes, people voting.
It's a community college.
To pay money for their community college.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of amazing that, are these people voting because they have a kid that's going to go there, or are they just, thinking about the community? If they never plan on going to ACC and don't have any kids will go, but still would support, paying taxes to support the college.
Well, you are paying taxes, so it's probably not a bad idea for you to stay on top of it. Now, one of the things that's useful to know, and I'm kind of clicking around a little bit on the ACC campus, you can find fiscal analyses, budget reports, all sorts of stuff related to it, so you can get some specific information related to this. Let me scroll through a little bit of this, and maybe, this wouldn't be a bad thing at some point to just kind of focus specifically on that. If you look at federal, state, private grants, I'm backing up a little bit here, the auxiliary budgets, the regular maintenance operation budget, this is all here.
But we got to trace down the sources. Let's do that for another time.
Let's do that. But it's all there. So the final thing I wanted to mention too, and we can go into some of the details here, but just to remind you that After the May 7th election, we get the May 24th election. It's on a Tuesday, and this is to pick the winners of the runoffs. So you had certain positions, and I think we've talked some about this before, state, local. Remember, what's going on in the primary is not the person who's going to hold on to the position. It's going to be the individual who's going to represent the two major parties in the ballot on November. Now, after this, the process comes into place, and this could be kind of fun, too, to look at the minor parties. You know, the Green Party is active in the state. So is the Libertarian Party. Because they are small parties, minor parties, and that's defined, I think I mentioned this before, as they don't have a candidate for statewide office that exceeds 20% of the vote. If one of your candidates for statewide office does exceed 20% of the vote, you're considered to be a major party, and so use the primary. If not, use the convention, and that's what they tend to use in order to figure out who their nominees are going to be. And then the issue for them is going to be to get those nominees on the ballot. And that's where you have to start to, one of two things has to happen. One of these parties has to have already had at least 5% of the vote for a statewide office, one of their candidates, and I don't think either of them did that in 2020. So that means they have to have a sufficient number of petition signatures, and I'll remind myself of the specific number soon enough.
Have they had their conventions yet?
No. They do that in the summer.
Okay.
Conventions, it's like July, I think, and when that is put off. Now, when I say conventions, let me back up a little bit. State conventions. What's going on right now? You have what are called precinct conventions. You have with the Democrats and Republicans. You have county conventions or senatorial conventions, where bit by bit, people that identify with the parties are introducing resolutions. Becoming. What's the word I'm looking for right now? Delegates that'll go up to each different level. So that process is in place right now, but it's in June and July when you begin to see the conventions meet.
Do you know which party is bigger in the state, Green or Libertarian?
Libertarian.
Yeah.
Libertarian. Now here's an interesting, and just by a little bit.
Just by a little bit.
Yeah. Well, what I'm talking about, we could look at. I tell you what, this is a way we can do it. Let me hold off on this, though. But generally, a libertarian candidate for statewide office sometimes might get 3 or 4%. Sometimes, and for whatever reason, it's usually like the person is running for the Railroad Commission. I'm sorry, that's it. That will get like maybe just into 5% of the vote. The Green Party candidate, usually they'll top off around 3% or so, something like that. But here's what's interesting about this. Generally, the Democrats like it when the Libertarian is on
sure.
Yeah, and the Republicans like it when the Green Party is up there because it helps, not necessarily split the votes, but at least peel off potentially enough individuals to make, the Republican candidate or the Democratic candidate just a little less competitive. But as I mentioned too, in terms of statewide races, what's going to be on the ballot if you're going into the Republican Party, it's Ken Paxton, the incumbent, versus George P. Bush as the Attorney General. We know who the candidates for the governor are going to be. Top two Democrats were Rochelle Garza and Joe Jaworski for the Democratic side. For the Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick has got it for the Republicans. It's between Mike Collier and Michelle Beckley. For Democrats, and Agriculture Commissioner is set. Susan Hayes, the Democrat, against Republican Sid Miller, Land Commissioner. There are runoffs for both sides. Sandra Grace Martinez and Jay Kleberg for the Democrats, Don Buckingham and Tim Wesley for the Republicans. And what is it with Comptroller? Glenn Hagar, who's been up there for a period of time, is the incumbent one for Republicans. He will be on the ballot. And you got Janet Dudding and I don't know if it's Angel or Angel, Luis Vega, duking it out for the Democrats. Now, the problem with a lot of these folks, too, though, is name recognition. Why are individuals voting for one person as opposed to another? There's an argument that sometimes low voter turnout. Oh, and I forgot to go through turnout numbers. I wanted to mention that real quick in local races. Maybe the individuals, who know what's going on or don't know who these people are, just kind of like pull themselves and decide not to participate because they're not sure who these individuals actually are. Let me throw turnout numbers for you if you're interested from 2021, because there were also local races then.
Is there primary turnouts numbers? Is that what you're mentioning?
This is for the races, the local races last year.
Okay.
7.47% for Alvin, 5.37% for Pearland, 6.88% for Manvel, 10.4% for Iowa Colony. So good for you, Iowa Colony. We hit double digits, just barely. Alvin Independent School District in 2021, it was 6.51% turnout, 5.2% turnout for Pearland Independent School District. And again, runoff elections are just low. We might be talking 2 and 3% turnout. Because remember, that's also by itself. So we don't. It's not just that we have typically low turnout elections. We've got them split. So it's maybe there would be higher turnout if the runoffs were at the same time that you had local elections, but that's not how we do it. So we will be talking about very low turnout, single-digit turnouts across the board here.
All right. Okay, so that's the overview. Say the dates of the elections again, so and briefly what they're for.
May 7th is the constitutional amendments and also local elections, local political subdivisions. That's the official term, and then the party primary runoffs on May 24th.
May 24th, and is there early voting or is it?
Yes, there is actually. If you look at the Secretary of State site, you will see. Let's see. Let me open that up real quick with the important dates. May 7th. Let's see. Last day to register. All of the stuff is there. Early voting. First day of early voting is April 25th. Last day, May 3rd for the May 7th election. And remember, that's a Saturday. And then for the runoff, let's see. Last day to register to vote, April 25th for that. And remember, you only have to register to vote if you're not already registered and haven't, continued to keep it updated. First day of early voting, May 16th. Last day would be May 20th for the Tuesday, May 24th primary runoff election.
Okay. All right. So you guys have some time when the voting starts. You guys will have time to get out there and vote. And in the meanwhile, we will probably maybe do another episode or two diving in closer to the issues and the candidates as we get nearer to the election.
I'd enjoy it.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, y'all.